William orders a guard to stand down, but what the guard reveals about Charlotte changes everything. William walked across the wide stone courtyard of the estate with the calm, steady steps that everyone around him had come to recognize. He had always been a careful man, someone who believed that clear rules and quiet order kept life running smoothly. For years, the estate had depended on his ability to handle unexpected situations with patience, and he rarely allowed anything to disturb his balanced routine. But that morning felt different from the moment he stepped outside. The air carried a strange tension, and even the birds seemed quieter than usual. From a distance, he saw three workers standing still near the gate, looking toward something, or someone, outside the entrance. William did not hear any shouting, no loud argument, no sound that clearly signaled trouble. Yet the stillness of the workers hinted that something unusual was happening. As the manager of the estate, William felt responsible for knowing exactly what was going on, so he walked toward the gate, his mind already preparing to calm a minor misunderstanding. As he approached, he finally saw the source of the disturbance. A young guard, Thomas, stood firmly in front of the gate. He was new, only a few months into the job, but he had proven himself careful and reliable. In front of him stood a woman William had never seen before. She was slightly breathless, as if she had walked quickly or was very nervous. Her hair fell around her shoulders in soft waves, but the tension in her face made her look like she was struggling to keep her emotions under control. William slowed his steps, observing the scene. The woman was not yelling, nor was she behaving in any threatening way. Yet there was something urgent in the way she held herself, as though she had come prepared for something important. Her fingers clutched a small envelope, pressed tightly against her chest. Thomas, the guard, stood squarely in her way, blocking her from entering the estate grounds. His posture told William that he was following protocol strictly, perhaps more strictly than necessary. William understood that new guards often took the rules seriously, wanting to prove they were dependable. He stepped closer. "What seems to be the problem?" he asked with his usual calm tone. The woman looked at him immediately, her eyes widening with recognition, or perhaps hope. Thomas turned toward William and gave a respectful nod. "Sir," the guard said, "this woman is trying to enter the estate without permission. She says she needs to speak with someone here, but she wouldn't tell me exactly who at first. And she tried to step inside before I could check anything." William looked at the woman. She looked tired, not in a physical way, but in an emotional one. Her shoulders sloped slightly, and her fingers tightened around the envelope as if she feared it might slip away. "I'm sorry if I caused trouble," she said softly. I really need to speak with someone inside." Her voice trembled slightly, but she did not look dangerous or unstable. William had seen tourists wander too close to private areas, business people arrive without appointments, and even a few curious guests who simply misunderstood the rules. Usually, all it took was a calm conversation to sort things out. William gestured gently toward Thomas. "It's all right, let her through," he said. Thomas hesitated, which surprised William. In all his years managing the estate, guards followed his instructions immediately. But this time, Thomas did not move aside. Instead, he drew a slow breath as if gathering the courage to say something he wasn't sure he should. "Sir," he said carefully, "with respect, I'm not sure that's a good idea." William blinked, taken aback. "And why is that?" he asked, keeping his voice neutral. Thomas glanced at the woman, then back at William. "She tried to step past me twice before explaining why she was here, and she kept saying she needed to see someone urgently but wouldn't give details. When I asked for her name, she said it was Charlotte, but she wouldn't say anything else. She looked upset. I thought it was best to make sure everything was safe." Charlotte lowered her eyes, clearly embarrassed. She looked like someone who had been carrying a storm inside her for a long time and had finally reached a point where she could no longer hold it back. William studied her face. She did not look like she wished to cause harm. She looked like someone holding a story too heavy to keep silent. He spoke gently. "Ma'am, may I ask why you need to enter the estate?" Charlotte looked up at him, and for a moment she seemed unsure whether to speak. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came. Instead, she held out the envelope a little, not fully offering it, but revealing that it meant something important. "It's difficult to explain out here," she said, "but it's important, and it's about someone from this estate, someone who lived here a long time ago." Her words puzzled William. Many people had lived on the estate through the years. Some were employees, some were residents, some were old family friends. He tried to recall if any major matter from the past could be tied to this stranger, but nothing came to mind. Thomas stepped slightly forward, still protective, though not aggressive. "Sir, I think we should be careful. She seemed very emotional when she arrived. When I asked her to wait, she insisted she couldn't wait, that it had to be now." "I'm not dangerous," Charlotte said softly. "I know how this looks, but I promise I'm only here because I was asked to come, not by anyone here, by someone who is no longer alive." Something in her tone made William pause. It was not dramatic or loud. If anything, it was quiet, almost apologetic, but it carried a depth that caught his attention. "Who asked you to come?" he asked. Charlotte swallowed, her eyes glistening slightly as if she were afraid the truth itself might shake loose something she wasn't ready to face. "Your father," she whispered. William froze. He had not expected that. Charlotte continued, her voice gentle yet steady. "He told me years ago that when the time was right, I needed to bring something to you, and that time is now." William stared at her, trying to make sense of what she was saying. His father had passed away several years earlier. How could this woman, someone he had never seen before, be connected to him in such a direct, personal way? Before he could respond, Thomas stepped in again, trying to protect his superior. "Sir, you don't have to talk with her. I can ask her to leave if you're uncomfortable." William raised a hand slightly to signal Thomas to wait. "It's all right," he said quietly. He could tell Charlotte was not lying, at least not intentionally. Her voice carried sincerity and her hands trembled slightly, not out of fear but out of the emotional weight she was carrying. He took a small step closer to her. "You knew my father?" he asked. Charlotte nodded slowly. "Yes." "Not closely, but enough to be trusted with something important." William felt a strange mixture of curiosity and caution rising. His father had always been a private man, someone who rarely shared details about his personal connections. If he had entrusted this woman with a task, it meant she had been part of something meaningful. "What is in the envelope?" he asked gently. Charlotte pressed it tightly to her chest again. "A letter," she said, "one he wrote a long time ago. But he told me not to give it to you until you were ready. And I think you are." William didn't know what to say. He felt the world shift slightly, as though a door he never knew existed had suddenly opened. "Sir," Thomas said softly, concerned, "do you want me to escort her to the office?" William thought for a moment. He could tell Thomas still felt uneasy, but he also respected that the guard was truly trying to protect him. It wasn't disobedience, it was genuine care. "Thank you, Thomas," William said calmly, "but I believe I can walk with her myself." Thomas hesitated, then nodded, stepping back but not taking his eyes off Charlotte. He was still alert, still ready to step in if necessary. His loyalty touched William, though he kept his expression neutral. Charlotte looked relieved, but also nervous. "Thank you," she whispered. William motioned for her to walk with him. The courtyard seemed unusually quiet as they began to move away from the gate. Every step felt like a step into a part of his father's life he had never known existed. The mystery held no danger, only uncertainty, and a strange sense of connection to a past he had long believed was complete. As they walked, William's mind filled with questions. Who was Charlotte? Why had his father trusted her? What secrets lay inside the envelope? And why now? The estate, usually a place of routine and predictability, suddenly felt like the beginning of a story he never expected to be part of. Something was changing. And he could feel it. Thomas watched William and Charlotte walk a few steps away from the gate, but something inside him would not let him fully relax. He had learned during his short time at the estate that William was a calm and trusting leader, someone who always tried to understand people before judging them. But Thomas also knew that people sometimes entered the estate with emotional stories, unexpected intentions, or confusing motives. His job was to make sure every decision William made was safe, not just for him, but for everyone on the estate grounds. So when William told him to stand down, Thomas obeyed outwardly, but inwardly he felt a strong sense of responsibility. Something about Charlotte's arrival, the urgency in her voice, and the way she clutched the old envelope told him that the situation was more unusual than anyone realized. Thomas was not suspicious of her as a person, he simply felt cautious. And when William was involved, especially now that she had claimed to know his father, Thomas felt the need to protect him even more. Charlotte walked beside William with small, careful steps, as if unsure whether she should speak or remain silent. William did not rush her. He could sense that whatever she had come to reveal required the right moment and the right space. But he also knew he needed answers. His father had been gone for years, and yet here was a stranger mentioning him as though he had spoken to her last week. Behind them, Thomas finally decided he could not simply walk away. He stepped forward, clearing his throat gently. "Sir, may I speak?" he asked. William paused and turned slightly, surprised by the seriousness in Thomas's voice. "Of course, what is it?" Thomas glanced at Charlotte briefly before speaking. "I want to explain why I hesitated earlier. I wasn't trying to question your authority. I just felt something was unusual. When she arrived, she looked very worried. She wasn't rude or aggressive, but she seemed like she was struggling with something important. I didn't know if she was okay or if she needed help. I thought stopping her was the safest thing to do." Charlotte looked at Thomas, understanding his concern. "I'm truly sorry if I made you feel uneasy," she said. "I just wasn't sure how to approach the estate. I've been holding on to this task for many years, and when I finally came here, I felt overwhelmed." Thomas nodded, still alert but more at ease. "I just wanted to make sure everything was all right." William noticed something in Thomas's expression, an honesty and loyalty that made him appreciate the guard even more. Thomas wasn't trying to be difficult. He was trying to do the right thing. "I understand," William said gently. "Thank you for explaining. You did your job well, but I need to hear what Charlotte has come to say." The guard hesitated before stepping back. He still kept his eyes on them, but from a respectful distance. William knew Thomas would remain close enough to help if needed, yet far enough to give privacy. That balance gave William comfort. He turned back to Charlotte. "Shall we talk in my office? It's quieter there." Charlotte nodded, grateful for his patience. "Yes, thank you." They began walking along the stone path leading to the main building. The trees lining the walkway swayed lightly in the breeze, their leaves whispering softly overhead. Charlotte kept her gaze fixed forward, though William noticed her fingers tightening around the envelope again and again. It was as if the paper inside held something she feared, not because it was dangerous, but because it carried a truth she had waited too long to deliver. After a few steps, William finally asked what had been growing in his mind. "When did you meet my father?" Charlotte hesitated, then spoke quietly. "Many years ago. I was much younger then. Our paths crossed because of something unexpected. I didn't work for him, and I wasn't part of his close circle, but we met during a time when he needed someone outside his usual connections." William listened carefully. "What kind of connection was that?" She shook her head softly. "It's not something I can explain fully until you read the letter. He asked me not to say anything until you were ready. And the envelope, it holds his words, not mine. I want you to hear the truth from him, not from me." Her answer was honest yet mysterious, and William felt the weight of the moment. His father had been a private man, kind, wise, but never someone who shared everything he held inside. The idea that he had written a letter meant there was something important he had chosen not to say out loud during his life. "Why now?" William asked gently. "Why did you choose today to bring it?" Charlotte breathed deeply, as though gathering her strength. "Because I promised him years ago that when you reached a certain stage in your life, when you seemed stable and strong on your own, I would come. And I've been watching from afar. Not spying or intruding, just quietly keeping track to make sure the timing was right." William found her words strange but not unsettling. She spoke with sincerity, not pride. She didn't act like someone who felt entitled to involvement in his life. Instead, she seemed burdened by the responsibility she carried. "Have you kept the letter all these years?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes, I kept it safe. I was young when your father gave it to me, and I didn't fully understand its importance until later. But I knew it wasn't mine to read or question. It was a promise I could not break." William's chest tightened slightly. His father had been gone long enough for the pain of loss to soften, but this conversation brought back the memory of his father's voice, his unique way of thinking, his secrets. They reached the entrance of the main building. The tall wooden doors stood open, inviting them inside, but before they stepped through, someone spoke again from behind. "Sir," Thomas called out softly. William turned. Thomas approached slowly, careful not to interrupt too much. "I think you should know something else." "Before you came to the gate, she wasn't just waiting quietly. She kept saying your name. She said she needed to find you specifically. It wasn't the estate she wanted entry to, it was you." Charlotte flushed slightly, embarrassed but not ashamed. "I'm sorry if that seemed strange," she said. I didn't know how else to express the urgency. I thought if I could just see you, everything would make sense. Thomas nodded respectfully, stepping back once more after delivering this detail. William looked at Charlotte, understanding her better now. Her behavior at the gate hadn't been reckless. It had been desperate, driven by a promise she had held onto for most of her life. He felt a gentle empathy for her. This wasn't an easy task for anyone, and she had carried it alone. Inside the building, the hall was quiet and softly lit. The air smelled faintly of polished wood and old books. Charlotte walked slowly, taking in the surroundings as though each detail carried meaning. William guided her to a small sitting area beside his office, a more comfortable place to talk. He motioned for her to sit. She did so with careful movements, her eyes lowered to the envelope once again. William took the seat across from her, still composed but deeply curious. Before he could speak, Charlotte began. "When your father gave me this letter," she said softly, "he told me that the truth inside it would change your understanding of him. Not in a painful way, but in a way that might open old doors, doors he had closed because he felt it was necessary." William listened intently. "Did he ever explain why he didn't want to tell me himself?" She shook her head gently. "He didn't give a clear reason. He just said you were too young at the time, and he didn't want the information to shape your childhood. He wanted you to grow freely without carrying the weight of his past." William leaned back slightly, processing her words. His father had always encouraged him to live independently, to find his own identity. He had never pressured William to follow his footsteps too closely. Now, it seemed there had been a deeper reason behind that approach. "Did he seem worried when he gave you the letter?" William asked. Charlotte thought carefully. Not worried, thoughtful, as if he knew that time would decide when the right moment came. She looked down at the envelope, then up at William again. "I know you want answers," she said, "and I want to explain everything. But some truths are best heard from the person who wrote them, and your father chose his words carefully." William felt his breath grow slower, more deliberate. Whatever was inside, that envelope had been waiting for him for years. And now, he was finally at the moment his father had prepared for long ago. Charlotte held out the envelope slightly, not enough for him to take it yet, but enough to show that the moment was near. "Before I give this to you," she said quietly, "please know that your father trusted you. He believed in the person you would become, and he trusted me to bring this to you at the right time. I only hope I have honored that promise." Her voice trembled with emotion, not fear but sincerity. William nodded slowly, his heart steady but full. "Thank you, Charlotte. I appreciate your honesty and your courage." She gave a small, grateful smile. Outside the room, Thomas stood near the hallway, guarding the entrance. He was still alert, but his expression was softer now, as if he understood that this was not just a matter of safety, but a moment of history unfolding. William and Charlotte sat in quiet anticipation, the old envelope resting between them like a bridge connecting past and present. And though no one spoke, something meaningful filled the room, a feeling that the truth was finally ready to be revealed. Charlotte sat with the envelope resting lightly between her hands, but her fingers continued to tremble as if it carried more than just paper. William watched her quietly, sensing that the silence between them was important. It was the kind of silence that prepared a person for a truth waiting to be shared. The air felt gentle and still, and even the faint ticking of the old clock on the wall sounded unusually loud, like time itself was waiting with them. For a long moment, Charlotte did not speak. She seemed lost in her own thoughts, perhaps remembering the moment she received the letter or the promise she made. Her eyes lowered to the envelope, and she traced its edges with her thumb, as though reassuring herself that she had not imagined the years she carried it. Finally, she took a slow breath. "Before anything else, I want to tell you how I came to have this letter, because the real story begins long before you ever saw me." William leaned forward a little, giving her his full attention. He noticed she was not nervous about sharing the truth, she was nervous about the weight of it. It was clear that whatever she was about to reveal had shaped her own life as well. Charlotte looked up, and her voice grew steadier. "I met your father by accident. I was about 20 at the time. I lived in a small town on the edge of the region, and I worked at a little cafe. It wasn't special or fancy, just a simple place where people came to relax." She smiled faintly at the memory. "One day, your father came in. He wasn't dressed formally like people knew him to be. He wore casual clothes and looked like someone who wanted to blend in. I didn't recognize him at first. He sat by the window, ordered a cup of tea, and spent the afternoon writing in a notebook. William pictured his father doing exactly that, quiet, observant, lost in his thoughts. A few days later, Charlotte continued, he returned. And then again a week after that. Each time he would sit in the same spot, write quietly, and thank me kindly when I brought his drink. After some time we began to talk, nothing deep at first, just weather, books, simple things. Her voice softened with memory. But one day something changed. He came in looking thoughtful, as if he had made a decision, and that was when he told me his real name. William felt a small shift inside him. His father rarely introduced himself openly, especially not to strangers. He was polite but private. He said he didn't want people treating him differently, Charlotte said. He liked being somewhere no one expected anything from him. I think he came to the cafe because it let him feel like everyone else. William nodded. That sounded exactly like something his father would do. And then, Charlotte continued gently, he asked me if he could trust me with something important, not right away, but someday in the future. At the time, I didn't know what he meant. I thought he simply wanted someone to talk to. She looked at the envelope again, her expression thoughtful. Weeks passed. He kept visiting, always calm, always kind. And slowly he started sharing small pieces of his life, not secrets but reflections. Things about choices he had made, things he wished he had done differently, and things he hoped might one day become clearer to his family. William felt the words settle in his heart. His father had never been the type to express regrets openly, but he had a gentle way of carrying things silently. One evening, Charlotte said quietly, he showed me this envelope. It was already sealed. He said the letter inside wasn't something he could give you when you were younger. He said it needed time, time for you to grow, time for him to think, time for the world to shape you into someone who could understand it. She paused, brushing her fingers slowly across the paper. He asked me to keep it safe, and he made me promise I wouldn't give it to anyone but you, not even him if he ever changed his mind. William blinked. He said that? Yes, Charlotte whispered. He told me that once he handed it to me, it would not belong to him anymore. It would belong to you, even if years passed before you received it. For the first time, William realized the depth of trust his father must have placed in Charlotte. She had been a stranger, yet somehow she had become a keeper of something deeply personal. But why you? William asked softly. Charlotte took a moment to answer. I wondered that myself for years, but I think he chose me because I was outside his world, because I had nothing to gain or lose. I didn't belong to his circle, so no one could pressure me. And I wasn't part of your family, so I had no reason to change or hide anything. I think he wanted someone neutral. William considered this. The logic was unmistakable. His father had always been careful, always thoughtful. Choosing someone outside the family meant the letter wouldn't be influenced by emotion, expectation, or fear. Still, William said gently, keeping something for so long must have been difficult. Charlotte let out a soft breath filled with years of unspoken feelings. It was. Especially because I never understood the full importance. I didn't read it. I never even held it up to the light. I didn't want to break the trust he placed in me. William felt a wave of respect for her. Keeping a promise for so many years required strength and honesty. But something happened, Charlotte said, her voice growing fragile. Something I never expected. William waited, sensing the turning point approaching. Your father stopped visiting, she whispered. One week he didn't come, then another. I thought he was busy. But after a month, I learned from a customer that he had passed away. Her eyes welled with emotion, not grief from losing a family member, but sorrow for the unfinished connection she had with him. I never got to say goodbye, she said softly, and it scared me. Because I still had the letter, and he wasn't there anymore to guide me. William felt a gentle ache in his chest. His father's passing had been hard for him, but now he saw how it had affected someone he hadn't even known was part of his father's life. So you held on to it all these years, William said quietly. Yes, she replied. At first I didn't know if I should bring it to you. I was afraid of approaching your family, afraid of not being believed, afraid of carrying something that didn't belong to me. But I couldn't break my promise. She shook her head slightly. I moved from town to town sometimes, but I always kept the letter with me. Every year I wondered whether it was the right time, but I waited, and I watched, quietly from afar. William frowned softly. Watched. Charlotte nodded, embarrassed. Not closely, not in a way that intruded on your life. I just kept a small distance. I would see your name in the news sometimes. I heard from people who visited the estate. I saw how you were doing. And I told myself that when you stood confidently on your own, when you weren't looking for guidance from anyone, that would be the time. William felt touched. And you believed that time is now? She looked at him with calm certainty. Yes, you feel ready. Not because your life is perfect, but because you have built it with your own choices, not because of your father's shadow. The room grew quiet again, and the envelope seemed to glow softly in the sunlight that filtered through the window. I need to tell you one more thing, Charlotte said, her voice almost trembling with the weight of what was coming. William nodded gently. Please go on. She held the envelope between her palms as if warming it. For years, I thought the letter contained instructions or maybe an explanation for a decision he made. But one day, someone from the old cafe recognized me and asked whether I still kept something he once left with me. And then he said something I never forgot. Her eyes lifted to William's. He said your father used to talk about you, not just as his son, but as something he hoped you would become, a person who could understand him in ways no one else ever had. William felt a warm shock run through him. His father had rarely spoken about his deeper hopes. Charlotte continued, her voice soft and steady. I knew then that the letter wasn't only a message, it was a connection, a truth he wanted to share with you not because it was easy, but because it mattered. William looked at her with quiet gratitude. Thank you for telling me this. It means more than you know. Charlotte hesitated, then slowly extended the envelope toward him. This is the moment he prepared for, the moment you were meant to reach on your own. I think he trusted that you would receive it when your heart was ready. William reached out, his fingertips lightly brushing the old paper. It felt fragile, like a whisper from the past. Charlotte released it into his hands. As soon as he held it, something shifted inside him. An emotional echo, a memory of his father's gentle smile, the sound of his thoughtful voice, the way he always paused before giving important advice. Charlotte watched William carefully, her expression both relieved and nervous. She had carried this responsibility for so long, and now she was finally letting it go. I don't know what the letter says, she murmured, but whatever it is, I believe it will help you understand parts of your father that were hidden, not out of secrecy, but out of love. William nodded slowly. His heart felt steady but deeper. I'm ready. Charlotte lowered her hands to her lap, her task complete, though her emotions still ran deep within her. Outside the room, Thomas stood near the hallway, still keeping quiet watch. But even he sensed the shift in the atmosphere. Something important had just taken place. Something that felt like the beginning of truth rather than the end of mystery. William held the envelope carefully, almost reverently. He did not open it yet. For now, simply having it in his hands felt like a moment his father had planned long ago, a bridge between past and present. And in that gentle stillness, the story that had been waiting for years finally stood at the edge of being revealed. William held the envelope for a long moment before opening it. The room felt unusually quiet, almost as if the air itself had paused to give him space. Charlotte sat across from him, hands folded tightly in her lap, watching with gentle patience. She had carried this envelope across years, across towns, and across seasons of her own life, and now the responsibility had passed from her hands to his. William slowly slid a finger under the flap of the envelope. The paper was old but still strong, a sign that his father had kept it carefully before giving it away. When he finally opened it, he drew out a single sheet of folded paper that had yellowed slightly with time. The handwriting on the outside, his father's handwriting, made his breath catch for a moment. It was familiar, warm, and steady. He unfolded the paper. Charlotte waited quietly, her eyes lowered, giving him a sense of privacy even though she remained in the room. William read silently, but as he read, Charlotte could tell that something inside him was shifting. His expression softened, then tightened, then softened again. It was as if each sentence in the letter walked him through different memories and emotions. The letter was not dramatic. It was not full of secrets about wealth or hidden family members or unexpected events. Instead, it was deeply personal, gentle, and full of reflections his father had never spoken out loud. The letter began by telling William how proud he was of the man he had become. It spoke of moments from William's childhood that his father had noticed even when William believed he hadn't. Little acts of kindness, small decisions that showed his developing character. Quiet strengths William never recognized in himself. His father wrote about wanting to guide him more openly, but choosing not to because he wanted William to build his own foundation. You needed space to choose your direction. the letter said. If I shaped you too much, you would never discover the strengths that come from your own heart. Reading this, William felt warmth spread through his chest. His father had always been distant in certain ways, not cold but carefully reserved. Now he understood why. The letter continued with memories William had forgotten, things his father had silently appreciated. The time William helped repair an old fence at the estate even though no one had asked him. The time he comforted a frightened visitor who had gotten lost on the grounds. Things William considered small, but his father had remembered them all. Then the letter shifted. I have kept a part of my past away from you, his father wrote, not because it was harmful, but because it belonged to a different time in my life. I did not want my past to shape the choices you made in your future. The letter explained that before William was born, his father had been involved in a project that brought him close to people he cared about deeply. It was a time filled with friendship, hope, and dreams. But it was also complicated. There had been disagreements, changes, misunderstandings, not arguments but difficult choices about the direction of work and relationships. Charlotte had been connected to that period, though not as a central figure. She had been someone his father trusted because she saw the situation from the outside, without being pulled into old expectations or opinions. He chose her because she could hold something for him without being influenced by the emotions of that time. His father wrote, "The letter you hold now was something I wrote when I realized that every story has two sides, the one we tell and the one we keep. I kept this part not to hide it from you, but to give you the chance to discover your own identity first." William felt his eyes grow warm with emotion. His father's words were gentle and wise, filled with a kind of clarity that seemed to reach across years and speak directly to him. The final part of the letter carried the deepest message. I want you to know that you were never missing any part of my love or trust. The truth I share now is not about mistakes or regrets. It is about understanding. I wanted you to grow without carrying my unfinished stories on your shoulders. Now, if you choose, you may learn them. Or you may simply continue your life with what you already know. Either path is honorable. And then, in a line that made William's hands tremble, his father wrote, I am proud of you not for what you have achieved, but for the person you are. Thank you for being exactly who you became. You filled my life with more peace than you will ever understand. When William finished reading, he didn't speak. He simply let the words settle inside him like soft rain falling onto dry ground. He folded the letter gently, as if afraid it might fade if he touched it too firmly. Charlotte watched him quietly. She did not ask what the letter said. She didn't lean forward or show curiosity. Instead, she waited with calm respect. Finally, William took a slow breath. Thank you, he said softly. Charlotte nodded, her expression full of relief and emotion. I'm glad you finally have it. It means more than you can imagine, he said, still holding the letter lightly. It's like hearing my father's voice again. Charlotte smiled gently. He hoped it would feel that way. William placed the letter on the small table beside him and leaned back slightly. His heart felt lighter, but not in an easy way. It was the kind of lightness that comes after understanding something deeply meaningful. A release of questions he never knew he carried. What did he mean about unfinished stories? He asked Charlotte. Charlotte folded her hands gently. Your father told me he had walked away from certain paths to protect his peace. He didn't want old misunderstandings to follow him or shape your life. But he also knew that someday you might want to understand why he made those choices. The letter was his way of opening the door without pushing you through it. William nodded slowly. It made sense. His father had never tried to shape his future or pressure him into certain roles. He allowed William to explore his own strengths, even if that meant choosing differently from him. Charlotte continued in a soft voice. Your father believed that every person deserves to grow without carrying burdens that do not belong to them. And he didn't want his past, no matter how gentle or complicated, to become something you felt responsible for. Her words echoed the feeling William had while reading. His father wanted him to be free, truly free. And what about your part in this? William asked gently. Charlotte lifted her head, meeting his gaze. My part was simply to wait, to protect the letter until the time came. I wasn't meant to explain everything. I was just a bridge between his past and your present. But that must have been difficult, William said kindly. You carried this alone for so long. Charlotte's eyes softened. It was sometimes heavy, but it also felt meaningful. I knew I was helping someone honor a promise, someone who trusted me when he didn't need to. I never forgot that. William felt a deep appreciation for her. She had no reason to stay connected all these years, no reason to travel to find him or gather the courage to approach the estate. Yet she did. "So what do you want to know now?" she asked gently. William thought for a moment. "I think I want to understand what brought my father comfort during the time he knew you. He didn't often share his thoughts emotionally." Charlotte smiled faintly. "He didn't share them in full with me either. But I think he came to the cafe because it was the only place where he felt he didn't have to be anyone important. He didn't have to make big decisions or carry expectations. He could just be a man drinking tea, writing his thoughts." William pictured his father sitting quietly, writing in his notebook, watching the sunlight filter through the window of a simple cafe. The image felt gentle and peaceful. "He told me once," Charlotte said, "that when you were old enough to lead your own life, he didn't want you to feel like you inherited a role you did not choose. He wanted you to build your identity naturally, not from pressure or fear." William felt a quiet warmth spread inside him. "That sounds like him," Charlotte nodded softly. "He hoped that one day when you read the letter you would feel closer to him, not because of information he shared, but because you would feel his trust." William looked at the letter again and a soft smile touched his lips. "I do." The room filled with a peaceful silence again, but this time the silence felt different. Not heavy or tense, gentle, like the closing of a long chapter and the opening of a new one. After a few moments, Charlotte spoke again. "There was one thing he said that I never forgot. He told me that life doesn't become easier with time, it becomes clearer. And that when you received this letter, clarity would matter more than answers." William exhaled slowly, feeling the truth of those words. Charlotte stood up slowly, unsure whether her role in this moment was complete. "I suppose this is where I should leave you to your thoughts." But William shook his head gently. "No, stay, at least for a little while. You brought something important today. It changed more than you know." Charlotte smiled with quiet gratitude. She sat again, her posture relaxed now, as though releasing a weight she had carried for years. In that calm moment, William realized something unexpected. The letter had not only revealed his father's thoughts, it had revealed a gentler understanding of himself, how far he had come, how deeply he had grown, and how silently his father had guided him from a distance. The truth didn't change everything instantly, but it opened a new space inside him, a space where understanding could grow, and where the past, instead of being closed, now felt complete. The room felt different now, not because anything had changed physically, but because William had changed inside. The letter, resting gently on the small table beside him, seemed to breathe with quiet meaning. It carried a part of his father he had never known, a part hidden not out of secrecy, but out of love. Charlotte sat quietly across from him, her presence calm and steady as if she understood he needed time to absorb everything. William leaned back, letting out a slow breath he didn't realize he had been holding. "I feel like I've just been given a new piece of my life," he said softly. Charlotte nodded. "That is exactly what he hoped for. He wanted to give you clarity without taking away your freedom." Her words were gentle, and William appreciated the sincerity in them. It was clear she hadn't come here to change anything, to demand anything, or to involve herself in his affairs. She had only come because she had promised his father she would, and now she was watching the promise come to its natural end. Thomas, the guard, still stood at a respectful distance near the hallway. He had been silently observing, sensing that this was not a moment he should interrupt. Every once in a while, he glanced toward them, making sure William was all right, then quietly looked away again. He did not know the contents of the letter, but he could feel the shift in the air, the shift in William. After a long silence, William turned toward Charlotte again. "I wasn't expecting any of this. I thought today would be a normal day, work, meetings, routine tasks. But now it feels like a part of my father's voice just returned to me." Charlotte smiled gently. "Your father had a quiet wisdom. He believed that timing was everything, and he believed you would understand his words better now than you ever could have in the past." William nodded. That, too, felt true. If he had received the letter when he was younger, he might have misunderstood it. He might have thought his father was hiding something negative or keeping a secret that changed their relationship. But now, as an adult with responsibilities, experiences, and challenges of his own, he could understand the intention behind every word. "I'm grateful you brought this," he said sincerely. "I know it must have been difficult to hold on to something for so many years." "It was," she admitted softly, "but it also became part of my life. a promise that shaped the way I saw time. I always knew I would have to face this day, that I would have to gather the courage to come here, and now that it has happened, I feel something has lifted. William noticed how her shoulders seemed lighter now, how the lines of worry around her eyes had softened. She looked peaceful, not in a simple way, but in a way that suggested she had finally completed something deeply meaningful. "What will you do now?" William asked gently. Charlotte looked thoughtful. "I'm not entirely sure. For years, this letter was a silent part of my journey. Without it, my path feels open in a new way. I think I'll take time to reflect, maybe start something I've been delaying." Thomas stepped a little closer, sensing the conversation had shifted to practical things. "Sir, do you need anything?" he asked quietly. William shook his head gently. "No, Thomas, but thank you. You've done more today than you realize." Thomas nodded respectfully, understanding that his role today had mattered more than simply guarding the gate. William turned back to Charlotte. "Would you like to walk outside for some fresh air? We can talk, or we can just enjoy the peace of the grounds." Charlotte hesitated, then smiled. "I would like that." They stood up, and William carefully picked up the letter, placing it safely inside a drawer before locking it, not because he wanted to hide it, but because he wanted to protect it. The letter was now a piece of his heart. They walked out into the courtyard, where the sunlight lay soft across the stone path. The gentle breeze carried the scent of grass, flowers, and the subtle warmth of the day. It felt like the world had slowed down for them, giving space for understanding. As they walked, Charlotte observed the estate with quiet appreciation. "It's beautiful here," she said. "It has always been home," William replied. "But today it feels deeper, more connected, like the walls know something I just learned." Charlotte smiled at his poetic expression. "Your father loved this place, not because of business or tradition, but because it gave him space to think. I think that's why he wrote the letter here." William looked at her with gentle curiosity. "Did he tell you that?" "He mentioned it once. He said this estate held stories, even ones he wasn't ready to share yet." William let those words settle inside him. The estate was more than a building or land. It was part of his family's history. And now, thanks to the letter, it held a new piece of truth. They walked slowly past a row of tall trees whose leaves shimmered in the sunlight. Charlotte stopped near one of them, lightly touching the rough bark. "Your father once told me that trees grow stronger from the inside out," she said. "He said people are the same. We may look steady on the outside, but real strength comes from things we learn quietly." "That definitely sounded like him," William said, smiling softly. For a while they walked in silence. It was a comfortable silence, one that did not need to be filled with words. The sound of birds singing in the distance gave a gentle background to their thoughts. After a few minutes, Charlotte spoke again. "I hope you don't feel overwhelmed." "I do feel overwhelmed," William admitted, "but not in a bad way. It feels like a puzzle piece I didn't know was missing has suddenly fallen into place." Charlotte nodded. "It's amazing how small truths can change the way we understand our own lives." William thought about that. It was true. Nothing in the letter had been negative or shocking. Yet knowing his father had thought so deeply about his future, knowing he had trusted a stranger to deliver a message, these things changed the way William saw his father's love. "What about his past?" William asked. "Do you know anything more about the people he mentioned?" Charlotte hesitated. "Only little things. He didn't share details. I think he wanted you to choose whether to explore that part of his life or leave it in the past. The choice is yours." William stopped walking for a moment, looking out over the wide lawn. The sun painted long, warm shadows across the grass. "I don't know yet, but I appreciate that he left the decision with me." Charlotte nodded. "He believed you would know when the time was right." They resumed walking, their footsteps light on the stone. William felt something new, a sense of calm acceptance. He couldn't change the past, but he could understand it, and he could choose how much of it he wanted to carry forward. After a while, they returned to the courtyard near the gate where the day's unusual moment had begun. Thomas stood there, now relaxed but still alert as good guards always are. He gave a polite nod when he saw them approaching. Charlotte turned toward William, her eyes warm. "I'm glad I could complete this promise, and I'm grateful for your kindness today." William felt a gentle admiration for her. "You showed great courage, Charlotte. Many people run from responsibility, but you honored a promise for years. That is something I will never forget." Charlotte looked down for a moment, touched by his words. "Your father believed in your heart, and now I understand why." She began walking toward the gate, ready to leave, but William stepped forward slightly. "You're welcome to return," he said sincerely, "not because of the letter, but because you're now part of a story that matters to me." Charlotte paused, surprised but grateful. "Thank you," she said softly. "Maybe one day I will." She walked through the gate, her steps calm, her shoulders lighter than when she first arrived. She did not look back immediately. She simply continued forward with the quiet dignity of someone who had fulfilled a long and meaningful purpose. When she finally reached the road, she paused and looked back toward the estate. William lifted a hand in a gentle wave, and she returned the gesture before walking away. Thomas approached William carefully. "Sir, are you all right?" William smiled softly. "Yes, Thomas, better than all right." Thomas looked relieved. "I didn't know if I should have stepped in more earlier, but I'm glad everything turned out well." "You did exactly what you should have done," William said warmly. "You protected the estate and me with good judgment. Your instincts were right." Thomas stood taller, proud yet humble. "Thank you, sir." William watched Charlotte's figure disappear down the path, then turned back toward the estate. The sunlight felt warmer now, the air felt clearer. The world around him seemed more open, as if his father's letter had not only revealed truths, but had gently rearranged the way William understood life. He walked slowly across the courtyard, feeling both grounded and uplifted. His father's words still echoed softly in his heart. "You filled my life with peace." William smiled to himself, touched by the memory of those words. He knew he would carry them with him forever. The letter did not solve every mystery, nor did it answer every question, but it gave him something far more important. It gave him connection, it gave him clarity, and it gave him a sense of peace he hadn't realized he needed. As he returned to his office, he paused near the door and looked around the estate, the trees, the workers, the buildings, the quiet corners where memories lived. Everything looked the same, and yet everything felt new. The day that had begun with confusion and uncertainty had ended with understanding and completion. And though Charlotte had walked away, William knew this wasn't the end of anything. It was simply the gentle beginning of a new chapter, one built not on secrets, but on truth, reflection, and the understanding that love sometimes speaks loudest in silence.